On Capitol Hill, Islamaphobic rhetoric is growing louder, with several GOP lawmakers posting hateful language on social media, particularly after yesterday's attacks in Virginia and Michigan. Congressman Andy Ogles, a Republican from Tennessee who represents thousands of Muslim constituents, spent hours making anti-Muslim posts after earlier this week saying, quote, "Muslims don't belong in American society." Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama also doubled down on his rhetoric after posting an image of New York's first Muslim mayor, Zohran Mamdani, next to an image of 9/11 and saying, "The enemy is inside the gates." Congressman Randy Fine of Florida explicitly saying, quote, "We need more Islamophobia, not less. Fear of Islam is rational." Last month, he posted he would choose dogs over Muslims. And Texas Congressman Brandon Gill posted, "No more Muslims immigrating to America." Let's bring in Msnow columnist Wajahat Ali and Msnow contributor and senior writer at The Dispatch, David Drucker. Wajahat, I think it's important to just call it out and to not allow that to be normalized. But what do you make of the fact that sitting members of Congress are being so openly hateful toward Muslims?
They feel emboldened because there's been no accountability. In my lifetime, I've never seen such open, naked hate against not just Muslims, but also Jews. It's tied together, the rise of both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And predominantly, it's driven by one party, the GOP, who are acting like cosplay crusaders, pouring gasoline on the fire as thousands of people are dying in Lebanon, in Gaza, in right now what you're seeing in Iran, and you see extremists benefiting from this rhetoric. The number one recruitment during the war on terror for ISIS and Al-Qaeda, let's not forget, was when some of these people used to say the West is at war with Islam. They say, well, okay, Islam is at war with the West. So you're seeing now blowback happening, and you saw that anti-Semitic attack at the synagogue. You're seeing Zohran Mamdani, who just happens to be Muslim and South Asian, being the focus of these targeted attacks by people like Jake Lang, who is supported, Anna, by Andy Ogles. Jake Lang is a Nazi, a person who says the N-word, a person who held an anti-Islam protest, right, at Mamdani's Gracie Mansion. Over there at that mansion, what happened? You had that IED attack by those two individuals who are also allegedly aligned with ISIS. So instead of calming the rhetoric, the GOP is pouring fire. People like Randy Fine, Andy Ogles, and Tommy Tuberville. And I must say, Anna, the reason why they get away with it is because they have not been censured. And I just want people to sit with this. Randy Fine, several months ago, said the following: mainstream Muslims should be executed. That means people like me, Anna. That means people like Ali Velshi, Ayman. He said they should be executed. Anna, can you please tell me, have they been censured in any way, shape, or form?
We have not seen any real consequences, at least within their chambers. David, these lawmakers have Muslim American constituents. In fact, Congressman Ogles has one of the largest Muslim populations in the American South. Why would they think this kind of bigoted and hateful speech is acceptable?
Look, I mean, I don't think like these people, so I can't say for certain why they think it's acceptable. I will say we live in an age of social media and clicks, when some of the loudest voices online from the left and the right applaud this kind of behavior. Obviously, when we're talking about Republicans, it's from the right that they're getting the applause, or that they think they're getting the applause, even though we know by every metric and every data set that loud online voices are a minority in American society. Most Americans are not on social media and don't use social media. I'd also add here, Wajat's comments are on point. But I want to add that some of the anti-Semitism out there also has been percolating on the far left extreme, and that rhetoric from the right, from Andy Ogles, from Tommy Tuberville, and the like, undermines what the U.S. needs to do from a national security standpoint, and be vigilant of the Islamic extremism that is inspired by ISIS and other extremist groups that does exist. Right. And when you
But that's not what they're talking about. They're not talking about the extremists. Right. They are talking about everyday Muslims.
Anna, yes, Anna, and that's my point, is you cannot have a productive conversation about national security as it relates to the extremism that we have seen from time to time when you have lawmakers, and in this case, it is only coming from Republicans, trying to paint all Muslims, most of whom, the vast majority of whom, are patriotic Americans or immigrants who contribute to American society like any other immigrant. You can't have that discussion when this is how they're treating people and talking about people.
And they don't have leaders calling it out. Let's listen to what House Speaker Mike Johnson had to say about all this.
There's a lot of energy in the country and a lot of popular sentiment that the demand to impose Sharia law in America is a serious problem. That's what animates this, and that's the the language that people use. It's a different language than I would use, but I think that that's a serious issue. Sharia law and the imposition of Sharia law is contrary to the U.S. Constitution.
The Muslim faith and Sharia law are not the same, and notice the speaker did not condemn what has been said. Wajahat, your thoughts on his attempt to justify it all?
I've lived through this before. This is a reboot of what's happening since the war on terror. It's failed. And all the people who try their best to justify any type of demonization against Muslims or Islam, it's failed. We've lived through this for 2 decades, folks. I'm so glad you mentioned the fact that Republican leadership has not condemned it. And I'm not here to play these games, Anna, of this both sides nonsense that I just heard. I'm sorry. Just this week, we found out the Manhattan Institute, the Conservative Institute, said a majority of young Republicans are Holocaust deniers. We have Donald Trump literally sitting with Nick Fuentes. The college Republican leaders just chose as the president a man who is a Nick Fuentes acolyte. Nick Fuentes literally praises Hitler and is an anti-Semite. What are we doing here? So yes, you'll have some people on the far left, because anti-Semitism, like Islamophobia, by the way, it's bipartisan, right? You get no penalty in America. You get no penalty in America for literally calling for the mass execution of Muslims. Democratic leadership, Anna, has not called for the censuring of Randy Fine or Tommy Tuberville, right? And so what we're seeing is extremism flourish. You're seeing politicians get that clickbait, but also this is who they are, Anna. What more do we need to see? If you are palling around with Nick Fuentes, if you are literally seeing young college Republicans again and again and again, not even young, but even in their 30s, you've seen their exposed tweets, their telegrams praising Hitler, this is where the party is. And this is why we need a robust condemnation. And furthermore, what we're seeing, especially with what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Lebanon, what's happening in Iran now, what I feared was 2 weeks ago, blowback. You're going to get asymmetrical warfare, radicalized individuals committing violence, and now you're seeing that. You're seeing blowback. So you need people to lower the temperature and say, hey, we're civilians, we're Americans, we're in this together, we reject hate, our enemy is not Jews or Muslims, and instead we're getting this. No accountability, the rising of hate, the mainstreaming of hate, and I refuse this both sides nonsense, because you have one party literally now where their youth is openly saying we love Hitler and using the N-word. What are we doing on it?
Well, and a reminder, we're talking about the extremes of the party. Wajahat Ali, David Drucker, I appreciate you both. Thank you for the conversation. Up next.